Recently, I did a large project. I had a lot of cars in the parking lot, and I systematically placed these vehicles throughout the parking lot. Lots of trees, lots of bushes. Went to render, and I don't know if it's a Windows 10 limitation, but something was freezing my workstation. Mind you, I have a pretty beefy workstation, so it shouldn't have been a RAM issue, but it was. And so I had to start optimizing my scene. I was rendering out a 4K image, so it was quite large. And I was watching my resources, and once the RAM hit 100%, my machine would freeze. So once I had to figure out what's going on there. But what I did was I created proxies, and I'm going to show you here my workflow. So typically I have two sessions of 3ds Max open. One is my working project, and one is the assets I'm bringing into my working project. I don't like bringing assets directly in. I may want to clean them up, fix pivot points. So I open up that second session, and then I use the script copy and paste so I can pick some geometry, copy it to the clipboard, go over to my working session project folder file and paste it. And that works flawlessly. So here I'm going to import a model. I'm going to do a vehicle. In this case, I have a van. And a lot of times these vans or these vehicles come in groups. So it's one group, and this one isn't, but I would ungroup it. And there's still some modifiers on this. For instance, this one has a mesh smooth modifier. I select everything and I convert it to a mesh. And each of these meshes have a material applied to it. So they each have a material ID. For instance, this one here, if I go to the subgroup, poly, select the polygon, ID2. This one here again, select the polygon, ID3. I'm sorry, these are ID1s. So I'm going to select arbitrarily any part of this van, attach list, select everything, and hit attach. So this is going to, since that window may have an ID of 1, the tire an ID of 1, because it's just one element, one material, this will create a unique ID for every material and then join it into one larger material. So this might take a second. So if I use my picker here, my selector, you'll see that each of the materials has its own ID with its material associated to it. Okay, and then I move this one mesh, because I'm going to export it as a proxy. I move this one mesh to 0, 0, 0. So I inspect the mesh and I see that the pivot point is at the bottom, which is really good. A lot of times it might be in the middle. If it is somewhere else, I use the script here called pivot placer, easy pivot, and that'll allow me to move it to the bottom. And I also, let's move the whole van to 0, 0, 0. Right mouse click, it zeroes it out. So that van is sitting on 0, 0, 0 at the bottom of the tire, which is perfect. And again, I inspect the materials, make sure that it looks fine, everything looks good. Right mouse click, V-Ray mesh export. I use V-Ray as my rendering engine. Since it's just one object, it doesn't matter which one I pick. But let's say I have 3 or 4 cars that are all merged into one element, each car, and I want to pick, let's say, 5 cars. I can pick that one, and each of those cars would be its own proxy. Really nice. In this case, it doesn't matter. I do want it to create a proxy. Hit OK. I just select the object. Try it again. That's good, that's good. This is where it's going to place it. I can name it there. Right there, I can give it a name. It's choosing the name of that initial element that I chose prior to merging everything, attaching everything together. That doesn't matter, I can change it anyway, but I'll just change it here. Van. Okay. So it's going to replace this high polygon model to a low polygon version and reference it to the file that holds that proxy. I can display this in several different ways. Box, preview from file, which is the default, file from faces, points, show whole mesh. The idea is to keep the scene light, so typically I just do preview from file. If the scene starts getting really heavy, I might go to boundary boxes. So now I can take this. What I've done before a lot is I'll have elements out here. Let's say I put some strange vehicle, you know, many times, hundreds of times, 10 times, doesn't matter. And the client says, you know what, I don't like that car. So what I can do is I can select those bad cars represented here by boxes. I can run this script here, Solver script, pick replacer, object replacer I think it's called, apply it. This is what I want to replace it with. Pick that low polygon proxy, select the attributes to keep. I don't want to keep the material because it's going to be new material. I don't want to keep the name. Everything else I probably want to keep. Apply. So there's those vehicles. I kept the scale. I want to back out of that. Don't want to keep the scale. Apply. So now I have that van replacing those bad vehicles, which were the boxes for this scenario. Let's say these were bushes. So I did an instance. These are all instances. So if I were to copy this, let's say 5 times, make sure you pick instance. So as far as the computer is concerned, there's really only one van there, and it's referencing that one van each time it gets to a copy, an instance of that van. So I can load this scene up with thousands, millions of these vans, and the scene will be manageable. The viewport to be nice and fluid, and it won't be choppy. Let's say these were bushes. I do this a lot often. I'll have thousands of bushes, the same bush, but I don't want it to look the same. What I'll do there is I'll pick all the proxies. Again, use the Solver script listener, and then that's going to be random. One second. What was it called? What is it called? Selection randomizer. Actually, that works, but I have another one I like better. And I'll place these all in notes below. There's another script here that I use, and it's called Object Randomizer 2. Rotate. I want to rotate 360 degrees from 0 to 360 along the Z. And I want the bushes to be, let's say, between 95% and 105%. Apply. Randomizes everything in my selection arbitrarily 360 degrees along the Z, or it can be anything else too. Sometimes trees I don't want them to be perfectly parallel to, or perpendicular to the ground, so I may rotate the X and Y slightly, and then the scale would be between 95% and 105%. So doing this with my vehicles, I was able to populate the parking lot with hundreds of cars, bushes, thousands of trees, and rendered extremely fast, and when the file was crashing otherwise, and running on RAM. And a perfect solution is the V-Ray proxy. So I hope this helps. Any questions, please